Now, indirect talks aimed at reaching a final agreement on a U.S. peace plan to end the war in Gaza have begun in Egypt. Egyptian state-linked media had reported that the first round of talks between Hamas and mediators concluded, and I'm quoting here, in a positive atmosphere. According to Al Qaeda News, which is affiliated with Egypt's intelligence services, negotiations are set to continue on Tuesday. Meanwhile, an Israeli delegation arrived in the resort city of el-Sheikh on Monday. The talks, which will see Egyptian and Qatari officials holding shuttle meetings with delegations from both Israel and Hamas separately, come on the second anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel on the 7th of October that sparked the war. Al Qaeda News earlier said delegations were discussing preparing ground conditions for the release of detainees and prisoners. A Palestinian source close to Hamas leadership said the negotiations are to be difficult and complex and may last for several days. Hamas has said that it agrees to the peace plan proposals in part, but has not responded to several key demands, including its disarmament and future role in Gaza. But U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters at the White House that Hamas was agreeing to things that are very important.
Certain things aren't met, we're not going to do it. But I think we're doing very well, and I think Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important.
Now, Trump denied that he recently told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stop being negative and take the win after Hamas accepted parts of the Washington proposal. Trump said it wasn't true, adding that Netanyahu has been very positive on this deal. Trump, whose envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner are expected in Egypt, has urged negotiators to move fast to end the war in Gaza, where Israeli strikes continued on Monday. According to Gaza Civil Defense Agency, at least 4 Palestinians were killed in the Israeli strikes overnight. All right, for more on this, joining me live from Brussels is Elijah J. He is a war correspondent and analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One. Of course, now it's 2 years since the war in Gaza began. 2 years on, we are still seeing negotiations between Hamas and mediators in the indirect form carry out, even though Egyptian state media said that the first round of talks were positive. Do you think we're back to square one? And by that I mean that we're back to negotiations and, of course, everything hinges on the release of all hostages.
Thank you for having me. These are not the first negotiations, because just a few months after the 7th of October, there were initial negotiations between Israel and Hamas in Qatar, and there were many of the Israeli hostages and prisoners released at that time. But then the release of all the hostages just a year and a half or 2 years ago would not allow Benjamin Netanyahu to continue the war and to remain in power and destroy Gaza. However, with the pressure from President Donald Trump, who wants the end of this war because it is destabilizing the entire Middle East, particularly when Israel bombed Qatar, showing that there are no limits for what Israel can do, and really increasing the concern among Gulf countries what the United States is doing in protecting them, particularly with all the military bases in the Gulf. For that, President Trump is putting all the weight in to end this war. And I think these negotiations in Egypt today, after 4 hours that have been discussed yesterday, the main point is the release of the hostages, but they are only because they are guaranteed from America, because there are many holes in the 20 points.
Right, absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when we talk of guarantees, something that a lot of people feel about this 20-point peace plan is that it lacks 3 major things. That's legitimacy, inclusivity, and of course enforceability. That of course brings in the point of guarantees as well. Do you think this 20-point peace plan will go forward, and do you think it can be effectively enforced?
Well, look, if you watch carefully what's happening in Egypt, we see that the main leaders of the delegations are not meeting yet even if they are in Egypt, because there are first the release of the hostages. And if this happened and Hamas agreed, but it is saying that how can I release all the hostages and bring them together if Israel is continue bombing and Israel are continue bombing? So this point, if this is removed, the Americans said they are the guarantor. And the Americans said we guarantee, and no one in the world can stop Israel apart from the United States if the Americans are capable of putting enough pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, unless Netanyahu will sabotage the future points, and he is clever enough to do it.
All right, now, so just to conclude this, of course, let me just come back to the question. Do you think we can see peace anytime in the near future? And if Hamas is still not agreed to several of the major clauses that includes demilitarizing Hamas itself, do you think that's going to happen?
I think it's going to happen because Hamas wants to end this war. 90% of Gaza is destroyed. 67,000 people have been killed, 200 plus thousand wounded. And for Hamas, it's important to end the war. However, it is not in the hand of Hamas. It is now in the hand of one person, Benjamin Netanyahu, and another one, Donald Trump, who is going to promise to put pressure on Netanyahu to end it. Now, again, end this war counts only on the details of the 20 points that were not mentioned. When Israel is going to withdraw from the Strip, how many humanitarian support are going to be allowed in, when the reconstruction is going to happen. There are so many points that are unclear, and Netanyahu did not say that he approved all these points. He said, I approve the plan, but we need to discuss.
Absolutely, sir, you're right. There are many issues that have been left vague and unanswered in this 20-point peace plan. And Donald Trump did say that now the ball is in Hamas's court. However, as you mentioned, it really just depends on Netanyahu and, of course, Trump, and whether or not they can exert enough pressure on Israel. How things pan out going forward, that's, of course, something that remains to be seen. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World this one.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.